Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us for today's webinar hosted by the Organization Development and Change Workforce Education Development Program at Penn State. As you know, this is a monthly webinar series presented during our lunchtime. My name is Isal Belushi, and I'm a PhD candidate in Workforce Education Development Program at Penn State. I'll be moderating today's webinar along my colleague, Jose Sandoval, who's also a PhD candidate in Learning Design Technology at Penn State University. In terms of the interactive format of the webinar, please use the chat feature on the Zoom platform. If you have any questions about the presentation, please use chat feature on Zoom. You can see the chat button at the bottom of the screen. The Q&A session will be at the end of the presentation. Our online Master Professional Studies in Organization Development and Change are designed for professionals who need the skills and knowledge to effectively lead change in their organizations. Furthermore, there is a PhD program in Workforce Education Development Program, which is concentrated in human resource development and organization development. Our program has created continuous monthly webinar series with a lot of experts around the world. Today, we are presenting a general theory of human resource development, ideation, methods, and implications presented by Dr. Greg Wang. Dr. Wang's current interest is theorizing HRD phenomena at organizational, national, and international levels. Based on his practitioner experiences in multinational corporations in contrasting socio-political contexts, he developed a breakthrough general theory of HRD to describe, explain, and predict multi-level HRD phenomena in contrasting contexts. This path-setting theory extends HRD research beyond the mainstream context. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming our speaker today, Dr. Wang. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you for my home program at Penn State inviting me. It's my honor to be here to share my latest research. As you can see, my background here is on the screen. I think you can read it. What I want to say, something is different, meaning that to show you how and why I started this research 25 years ago, maybe more than that. Almost 30 years ago, when I was at Penn State, I got my master's degree in economics. And then I found this wonderful program here, Workforce Development and Education. And later on, it's known as HRD program. So I switched to this program while I got a ABD at economics. And then when I get into this, probably some of you, if you're from this program or from any other PhD program in the United States, you may have experienced the similar situation as I did. At the time, there was no formal theories for HRD, not even that. Now, the definition of HRD has been debated, and a key point, even at this time, as we speak, is that HRD is a applied field, not a discipline of research. Applied field meaning it's applying psychology, economics, system theory to practice. Then it came to me, one key question is, what is the uniqueness of HRD? If you don't have a commonly accepted definition, if you don't have a unique theory, differentiate yourself from psychology, economics, blah, blah, blah. So this is in a dilemma where in PhD programs study this field. However, we don't have a unique theory. So that's got me thinking, and lots of senior scholars at the time saying HRD is so complicated and complex situation in organization, blah, blah, blah. Lots of reasons for why HRD does not or does not need a theory. Then I asked, because given my economics background, I asked, okay, let's take a look at economics. Economy, is that less or more complex than HRD? You have multiple products, services market, stock market, and supply and demand curve, and the future market involving producers, customers, consumers, and government policies. At the time, I knew that economics is more complex than HRD, or claimed HRD. So I thought, if scholars can derive various variety of economic theory to guide us to understand the economics, why can't HRD do that? So that was actually, if you call it ideation, that was the origin of my research question, how that started. Okay, let's move to the next one. And for today, the key point for presentation here is what is the theory and theorizing. And the idea of the theorizing sources and origin. I just covered the very original ideation, but later on we'll have more. And then what is the general theory of HRD? This part I will mostly skip because we send out the references, my publications, and from my publication, you can trace out all the earlier debates, literature, and justification for not to have a HRD theory or uniqueness of HRD. And then my major key point would be the implication of my theory to HRD theory, research, and practices. And I would welcome any challenges, questions, or critiques to my theory and to my the entire presentation. So please get ready for your questions. And if we don't have enough time, we can discuss it offline, because the entire presentation today is actually a 3-credit-hour PhD courses in my PhD program. And I teach it for almost 5 semesters. So it's a very long story put compact in just a 1-hour session. So what is a theorizing, or what is theory? And people got all different opinions, especially in HRD. I know Dr. Swanson says HRD, okay. He quoted Dr. Tarako at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, saying HRD theory should explain what and how, for which I disagreed, because theory is all about describing something. For HRD theory, it has to describe all the HRD phenomena, big or small, at individual, organization, and national level, and anything in between. And then a theory should be able to explain what's going on in the reality, not how something is going on in HRD. And then the most importantly, if you can describe HRD phenomena and you can explain HRD phenomena, then the highest stage for any theory is to predict. Think about the stock market. People knows how to describe this market, demand and supply, and then they can explain it, why the stock market is going up and down, government policy, market situation, competition, all those good things. But can we predict HRD phenomenon? So theorizing and theory is all about just describing, explaining, and predicting. Okay, in addition to my earlier questions on why HRD cannot develop its own unique theories and definitions, and I reviewed 32 ongoing most popular HRD definitions and used the qualitative approach, keywords analysis, semantic analysis, and all the good qual stuff, and derived a new theory. Basically, it is a theorized or conceptualized HRD definition, because the past definition after the keywords analysis, I saw all definitions in the past, including well-known scholars, Dr. Swanson, Dr. McLean, and many others, saying basically a long laundry list, just listing all the specific activities in HRD, like instructional design, or even IDDIE. I'm sure most HRD students or practitioners would know that good stuff, ADDIE, the instructional design stages. That's practice driven on how, but nobody actually get to the key part. What I say is core part of the HRD, what really HRD doing. Because if you focus on specifics, there are always new technology, new practices coming out, and you focus on those things, the laundry list would get longer and longer, which I proved through my research that the definition of HRD is getting longer year after year. And still we can get the consensus. So my definition, published in 2017, focused on 3 core attributes of HRD. Number 1 is HRD, for whatever activities, it has to have some organization to pay the bill for HRD, your salary, your equipment, your travel, whatever. Somebody has to pay the bill for HRD, which is what I call it, host institutional system. And this thing is the key part of HRD because it sponsors HRD activities. And then HRD activity can be conceptualized and theorized into 2 general areas, shaping and scaling. And shaping is all about culture, not really culture, values, beliefs, norms, those kind of soft side of HRD. You have to be consistent with your host organization who's paying for your bill, and to basically take that host system as your boss. This is a direct opposite of Dr. Gary McLean's theory. If you take a look of Gary's HRD definition, he would say HRD's purpose of HRD is for the benefit of the whole humanity. And when I saw that definition first published in year 2000, and I said, well, based on my practical experience with GE, Motorola, and many other organizations, my boss would allow me to do some weekend volunteering work, but he or she won't pay me for doing something to benefit the whole of humanity. That is a problem for that definition. And then if you got your values, beliefs fixed, then next thing is scaling. Scaling would include everything that included in the existing HRD definition. In today's world, AI, machine learning, and internet technologies, all those good things would be or could be incorporated into scaling. But if you fall in the previous definition pattern, then you would say, okay, HRD laundry list can be added longer for AI and internet technology. So there's another side of the fence, different from my definition, and the rest of the mainstream definition was by Dr. Monica Lee, a professor in the UK. She promoted for many years since year 2000. Her key point was refusing to define HRD. So based on her opinion was like, let's not spend time on theorizing. We don't need that. We just need to put our hands on the organizational problem. We just solve problem and leave the definition behind. We don't need that as long as we serve organizational well. So that's another triangular pattern is going on for quite some time. So given the definition, basically it says HRD is focused on shaping and scaling to serve or support the performance of the host institutional system. And given that, we can decompose the three core components in this definition. And shaping can be divided or defined into open shaping and closed shaping, which is determined by if your host institutional system is open or closed. And this is supported by the actual reality in the world right now. Think about, I started with first defining closed system or closed shaping. To be closed host institutional system, it has to satisfy two requirements or two preconditions that HRD activities start with. Number one condition is that the target of HRD audience, they are restricted by their locations. That means they have no way to escape from where they live, where they work. There's no way they can escape and get out. That's the number one condition. Number two condition for closeness is the information flow and information sources are restricted or confined or manipulated by the host institutional system. Think about, let me finish the discussion first. And then the open shaping or open host institutional system would be the US part, which is no restrictions on your physical location. You can go anywhere you want. The system won't stop you for doing so unless you don't want to leave. That's number one. Number two is no restriction or largely no restriction on information flow, meaning freedom of speech and freedom of expression on whatever platform, internet, social media, or in organizational setting. So given this, we have two situations here, and then two situations on open shaping, closed shaping, and open HRS and closed HRS. And then scaling would be subject to shaping openness or closeness, and subject to the HIS openness, closeness. And for the scaling can also be decomposed by positive scaling and descaling. I call it descaling, which is negative scaling. In the mainstream HRD, which is represented by the 32 major mainstream definition, focused on positive scaling. Always says HRD training is motivational, is positive to improve performance, but ignored potential descaling part or negative scaling. Because think about this. In China, with closed shaping and closed system, they spend billions of dollars to build this internet firewall, which is positive scaling, to use the latest technology, create this firewall for the purpose of what? To descaling, to limit all HRD target audiences, information sources, and manipulate information to ask people to praise the party, praise the leader, to loyal to the party and the leaders. So, given all these theorizing 2 by 2 by 2, basically. So we have a combinations of different relationships. Theory is all about relationship. You have to first understand the relationship, describe the relationship, and then explain how relationship taking place in the reality. And then later on, actually, my theory predicted the current decoupling process in the global setting and internationalization setting. So basically, this theory satisfies all the earlier criteria I mentioned about describing, explaining, and predict. We'll have that later on for more details. And then for the theory, I won't go into detail, but I derived 2 axioms and 3 theorems of HRD to show how we can use abstract thinking describe the HRD. This chart I won't go through, but just remember here is the performance in open system, open shaping is defined differently from performance in the closed setting. Think about the performance in the mainstream HRD. It's on the competency, what you do, how you do it, and what positive outcome you can create for your organization or for individual or for the national HRD workforce development. However, in the closed setting, you have the criteria for performance is not on what you do. It's basically on what you say, what you express, which is the loyalty. You have to be loyal to the authoritarian leadership, to the Communist Party. And then on the information flow, it's in the closed setting would be censorship. And in the open setting, that would be a free flow of information, free access to all kinds of information. This actually also predicts another critical issue later on we will briefly cover, which is explain why China cannot be more innovative than US because of the loyalty requirement and information censorship. They're restricted by their independent thinking and critical thinking. And they're restricted by the information sources and flows so that the entire workforce cannot be as creative as they wanted and confined by the system. Anything deviated from the political correctness will be killed in the first place. So the prediction of the innovation is here clearly, and that also explains why China and many other countries in the closed systems trying to steal US technology and intellectual properties. This series goes that far. And then this is the three-dimensional Cartesian system to explain. I won't go in detail because the entire axiom and the theorem of HRD are based on this and the last slides. And then here, nicely and graciously, we could use mathematical expression to explain HRD's activities and phenomena and in and outs. Basically, this theory, you don't have to know the how to do the math, but the story is HRD activity, performance, and outcome is a function of shaping, scaling, and host institutional system. That's the whole story, just one sentence. And then you can plug in anything, all the different dimension 2 by 2 by 2, and to get a really nice theoretical development. And here is a case study on the innovation part for Chinese situation now. I won't go into detail to boring everybody on this mathematical derivation, but again, it can be told in a story, a verbal aspect. Let me use the first one, the Q1 part, quadrant 1. This is a national innovation capacity system is positive, depending on the function of open shaping, open scaling, and open host system aspects. This is basically describing China's earlier, in the beginning of the open policy. At the time, Deng Xiaoping started reform and openness to the outside world. Everything was looking so good, but the rosy part quickly fall into the quadrant 4, which produced all negative outcome. We won't go in detail. If you have interest and if you have not read the theory paper, I encourage you to read it. Everything it was explained very detailed because that paper experienced 9 rounds of peer review and editorial review process. And the editor actually exhausted the entire HRD field for the scholars who had any experiences or interest on the theory building research. So I have strong confidence on the derivative of the theory. And I welcome your challenge and critiques. Okay. So first implication for HRD research and practice, which is to make people aware of the fact that HRD should be similar to economics. We should have micro HRD focusing on individual, organizational, inter-organizational activities. And then we should also have macro HRD focusing on regional, state level, national, international, global HRDs. And then given all this on higher levels, this was the nicely include workforce development at national level and at regional state level whatsoever. And then we have a multi-level, multi-context HRD research and practice setting based on shaping and scaling and openness or closedness of HRD, HIS. And then based on all those, I created this wheel. This is inspired by McLagan. If you're in this field long enough, or if you have examined or aware of the HR wheel created back in 1989 by McLagan. And this was a similar the wheel that I derived trying to differentiate this new theory with from the mainstream theory. The core part is strategic performance improvement. And we all know in the corporate world, we want to do things faster, better, cheaper, which is speed, quality, and cost. Focus on all those, and then we would have innovation capacity and capability in any way, positive or negative. So on the left-hand side, we have HRM, human resource management, which is mostly at a macro level on firing, hiring, planning, job design, performance appraisal, all the operational functions or maintenance functions, legal compliance, labor union, government relations, employee assistance, all those good stuff. But that's not HRD. And on the right-hand side, to get to the core point, we would have leadership. In the earlier time, if you're following the mainstream definition, leadership may not be included in HRD. And in fact, leadership has its separate literature base, and there's the Leadership Quarterly and many other leadership literature journals out there, and they don't consider they are part of HRD. But my theory included anyway. Why? Because leadership play a key role on shaping, either open shaping or closed shaping. A closed shaping use a well-known expression is also called brainwashing. Think about it. They want to wash your brain and to fit your thinking into their closedness. And in my PhD classes, first PhD research class, I tell my students also to be prepared. You guys are being washed starting from the first class, because we want you to have scholarly thinking, not practitioner thinking. And you need to know all the ins and out of the HRD activities, which you already have, because our students mostly are full-time executives around the country. So I said, you're being either call it shaped, indoctrinated, or brainwashed. And scholarly writing, scholarly thinking, independent thinking, critical thinking, and eventually analytical thinking, and achieve the purpose of creative thinking. That's the four thinking pattern I consistently emphasize in my classes. And I also offer bonus points for my PhD students if anybody can offer substantive critiques on any of my earlier publications. So that's a side story. And then think about leadership on value, beliefs, culture shaping, and readiness for change, ethics, social, political responsibilities, those kind of things. We'll cover ethics at a later time. And then learning, assessment, knowledge acquisition, all those good stuff. However, more than that, for HRD, we have a higher level, as shown in the last diagram, at national level, macro level, or international level. We have national policies. Think about right now in the US government, they put billions of dollars on AI technology and human interactions related to HRD activities. And so the key point here, consistent with the mainstream definition and theory, quote unquote theory, is that I maintained consistent 3 keywords in HRD, which is change, learning, performance, focused on all those 3. Change is about value change, belief change. Learning is a key point for HRD. And performance is the middle part of this wheel. So we'll have everything covered, HRD and training and development. Okay. Another implications that I mentioned briefly earlier, HRD globalization versus decoupling. So different HIS determine different values and beliefs on behalf of HRD. So that means HRD will be unable to change general society or system determined values and beliefs. Otherwise, you're going to be fired. Nobody will pay for your bill. So you have to be consistent on values and beliefs with your host system. And you cannot establish sustainable globalization between 2 opposing HIS which hold different values. Think about China and US. In the beginning, Bill Clinton was trying to embrace China and convince the Congress to let China go into WTO, but China made a fortune. And then they pretended, say, okay, we can we can maintain the differences in ideology. They didn't say value or beliefs. And then they say, okay, let's maintain the differences and focus on the commonality, which is economic benefit. China won't make money into get into WTO, and US also want cheap product to benefit the consumer. So that's the key part why the past 30, 40 years, the 2 countries like a couple worked in the same globalization setting. But my theory predicts if you have the contrasting opposite value system, you won't develop sustainable relationship. And that's what's happening right now. By the way, this theory actually was developed and I got the predicted right actually way before President Trump started debate with China on the trade deficit negotiation or trade embargo way before that. But it was only because of the review process delayed the publication. So this is also show the beauty of the theory development. It can lead you somewhere and develop something convincing. So the key point here is I predict that the decoupling will be worsened, and U.S. government, U.S. consumers need to be prepared to see more of consumer product from either made in US or made in Europe or made in countries that has a similar value system with us. And value system, later on, I will cover it on the ethical part, but value system belief system determines the criteria on good or bad, right or wrong issue. This is very critical. If you do not believe you have the same criteria on this value of good or bad and right or wrong, regardless if you're a couple living in the same family, or if you're an employee working with an organization, or in the globalization as a trade partner, you are going to be broken up sooner or later, given the theory that we see here. Okay, now I'll get to the HRD ethics. In the past, mainstream HRD literature has a rosy, really positive mainstream HRD ethical. I wouldn't call it a theory, but it is some kind of saying. There's a professor in North Carolina State, first like 10 years ago, published a book. You can search it. I forgot his name. Oh, Tim Hatcher. Yes, Tim Hatcher. Professor Hatcher published a book called Ethics in Human Resource Development. And I'm not sure how many editions he produced. But if you see that book, you won't see anything that is negative. HRD should focus on social responsibility, should be work like a whistleblower, things like that. But this theory, based on the HIS, it says that HRD is all about criteria and standards on good or bad, or right or wrong regarding individual and organizational behavior, which is based on the value system, belief system, preconditioned by the host institutional system. And just some quick example. Think about, I'm not sure how many of you heard of the Huawei's current rotating CEO, the founder's daughter called Meng Wanzhou. She was detained during the pandemic, right before the pandemic, by the Canadian government under the request of the US government, saying she violated US law and international law and had cheated on bank transactions to transfer large amount of money to Iran, and which is embargoed by, sanctioned by the US government. And US government requested that Canadian government extradition Meng Wanzhou to the US to accept the punishment by the US legal system. And then there was more than 2-year-long legal fighting in Canada. Eventually, right before the closing of the pandemic, they made a deal. Meng Wanzhou signed a legal document produced by the US government. She acknowledged all the wrongdoing in exchange of her being released back to China. And then clearly, this is legally wrong. It's a crime. It's wrong. However, when Meng Wanzhou was released, Chinese government had a chartered plane, chartered jet, take Meng Wanzhou back to China, and she received heroic welcome by the local government and local people, saying, "Welcome home. You are my hero. You are the country's hero." See, the right or wrong, it's just like a white and black, that clear. So that means HRD ethics is clearly serving the purpose of the host institutional system. Regardless what you do in HRD, you're going to be forced to do so. Otherwise, you're out. You would be unemployed as an HRD professional. Okay, now next is culture. We talked about a lot in culture, and I'm probably quite sure many of the audience have heard of or studied or cited Dr. Hofstede culture dimension research. Now, my theory challenged that because due to his well-known research, in case you never heard of this, Dr. Hofstede had a study back in very early, 1969 or 70, around that period. He surveyed IBM global employees located in 20-some countries at that time. And think about IBM was that big at very early time. He surveyed all the employees regarding their culture, expression, culture, custom, all those good stuff, and derived, using factor analysis, derived 5 dimensions on culture. Different culture have different like power distance, respect, male domination, those kind of good things. And then later studies follow that lead, and a lot of HRD, HRM, management, organizational literature also published studies saying culture can be used as an independent variable, as an exploratory, independent variable to determine, or the performance-driven dependent variable. However, my theory here now basically challenge that. First, let's start with the critical question. I want to, for those of you interested in scholarly research, I want to emphasize that please remember, when you have a good research question, would be much important than you have a good research or good research methods or research process, because good research question can trigger, can generate, and produce through the impact a lot more good research paper and studies with good processes or techniques. So here's a question based on Hofstede culture research. One of the books most influential of Professor Hofstede was entitled Culture, the Software of Mind. That's the exact title. You can search right now on Google Scholar or Google Book. Just based on that title of the book, I would curiously ask a serious research question. If culture is the software of the mind, who is the programmer? This is a critical question. I think I already found the answer, which is the programmer is the host institutional system. It is not HRD. So think about all the recent HRD literature studies. We see comparative studies between China and India. This study published in 2018. If I can even name the name for the authors, but if you're I won't do that because this video will be on the YouTube. I don't want to offend anybody. So to compare China and India is, to my opinion, is to compare apples and oranges. They're under different opposite HIS. And if you see those comparison, I wouldn't call it a scholarly research, but take a look. And I also see well-known scholars together co-authored. Of course, the PhD student is the primary leading author. Compare 5 BRICS countries on their HRD, whatever. Just think about it again with the same question. They are under opposite or different HIS system, and their values are completely different. And if you are doing such a comparative study among these, whether regardless if you include culture or not, it's meaningless. It just well, one benefit to the author is to add a publication on your CV, on your resume. Nothing more, nothing less. That's it. And I have more compelling reasons to show, think about China and Taiwan. Both countries were under the same Confucius culture roots. Why HRD are doing opposite things? Think about again, North Korea and South Korea. They are the same culture roots, again, same language like China and Taiwan, but they're doing different things in HRD, and which is determined by the host system. Again, the old East German, West German division, same thing. So this means culture may be important in terms of a moderator or mediator. It just have limited impact on the core HRD purposes, objectives, and outcome. So with all these, there's something else on implications. This is about theoretical foundations of HRD. I'm sure if you come to HRD PhD program, one of the first books you read could be in this country, Dr. Swanson's Foundations of Human Resource Development. And excuse me. According to Dick, we're good friends, and I was heavily influenced by his critical thinking, and of course his initial conceptualization on so-called 3-legged stool model for HRD. But with my theory, this 3-legged stool may not be any more relevant for understanding HRD, because that stool's just focused on 3 theories, which is psychology, economics, and systems theory. However, my research in HRD, like this theory, used many different theories. If you pay close attention, political science, sociology, economics, among other things. So my point would be whatever theory, or plus mathematics. So regardless, whatever the theory people consider as a foundational, you as a scholar, when doing research, never try to confine your insight within so-called three-legged stool. And I actually emailed Dick this article when it was published, and Dick was quite positive, not like the other social scholars. Dick said, well, that's the way the theory development goes. And in fact, Dick's third edition of that Foundations of HRD book included my 2017 definition of new definition of HRD. But at the time he was working on the book, it was deadline was so tight, he did not make any comments on my definition, just listed as the latest one. The key point is here is that the old or mainstream conception of HRD may be still relevant in the mainstream Western US-based or European-based HRD practices. However, it will not be applicable anymore when you move to the globalization part at the national level, because given our different HIS system, it just won't work. Think about China. This is another case. They would not consider any economic returns on HRD. The $1 billion Great Firewall, they received zero return economically, but they received every return to confine the country's, the people's employees within that firewall's creativity, independent thinking, and critical thinking.
Dr. Wang, I'm so sorry for interrupting you, but we have less than 5 minutes and we have a couple of questions to raise to you, please.
Okay, here's a quick conclusion, and I can skip that. But with all the discussion here, I think audience can reach your own conclusion. All right, quick reference here. If you have time, please read and do some more research. All right. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Wang. We received a couple of questions here. The first one, I think it was about how does the HRD theory that you propose here effectively integrate organization development with individual development, and why is this integration essential for the organizational success?
That's a good question. Actually, reviewer asked in the development of the manuscript. And this theory is, I call it a general theory. Organization development is related into that shaping function or shaping mechanism. Theory, because it only, I mentioned multiple times earlier, theory is all about describing, explaining, and predict, not about how to do that. That's the part of job by the practitioner. How you do it, different organization will do it differently. If you focus on how to do it, you won't be able to never get to a general theory. So that's one part, but the question is legitimate. And on the individual development part, similar way through learning, learning development, and think about all the formal learning, informal learning, incidental learning, things like that. So I want to mention one part is shaping, the relationship between shaping and scaling. Shaping only without scaling is not HRD. It is a labor camp. They just want you change value. They don't care about what skill you have. Scaling without shaping is not HRD. It is adult learning. Think about you go out, take a yoga class, a golfing class, That's just add your skill. You don't need to change your value system. Only when shaping plus scaling together, we call it HRD. Okay.
Here I have, I think it's last question here, maybe based on the time. So talking about the criticism and challenges that you have encountered regarding your theory or this theory, can you address one of them and how you adapted the theory? Like, how did you respond to that challenge or criticism that you received?
Can you repeat that challenge? What was that?
Yeah, sure. Talking about criticism or challenges that you have encountered regarding this theory. So what was the main challenge, or what was the main criticism, and how you have addressed or adapted the theory in response to that criticism?
Okay, that's a good question. Because this theory is more of a high-level explanation, predicting thing. Most of challenges are more like a clarification challenge on detailed aspect. One would be the one you just asked. Another one was like, how do you differentiate open versus closed HIS? In our paper at the time, we only used the one international index. And at the time, we actually identified 6 more international index on measuring countries' freedom index, internet freedom index, or freedom of economic index, or corruption, national corruption index. All those combined together, we can get an empirical study on any country to rate this country's closedness or openness, to make a determination, and along that axis, horizontal line, to place the country as could be semi-open, could be semi-closed, things like that. So mostly they were on the technical specifics. One more thing was that it was interesting. The micro chart was included in the first version, and then throughout the first 6 rounds of peer review, the reviewer says that classification does not relevant to this theory for the purpose of getting published. So I removed that. And then up to the last round, the last round peer review, the reviewer says, okay, you need to tell me so what of your theory. If you derived such a rigorous theory, but you missed so what. I said, okay, my first version micro chart would be plugged in right there. That's one so what, important so what. So the reviewer are in that part. However, I did got some resistance, and I have to say serious resistance on my definition article. It was basically rejected by all HRD journal. That was why you see that article is published in Personnel Review. That is a HR journal, because I got reviewers' comments without any substantive content, just saying, I don't like it. Well, that's helpless. Research is not about your personal like or dislike. So I'm telling you, this research received very, very strong resistance, but I'm glad it's published right now. So it's part of the literature. Good question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wang. Thank you so much, Dr. Wang, for such interactive and very interesting presentation. I know that, as you said, such presentation would not be accommodated in 1 hour more than this, but we provided our guests and our attendees the citation and the references So just here they can go more deeper and navigate the information that you provided regarding the theory. On behalf of our OD&C and WFED program, we hope to think that this webinar is helpful. So if you did not get your question, please send us an email to reach out to the presenter directly via an email or to us using our social media and email that we used. For the future webinar, we would like to hear your feedback on today's webinar. Please take the survey using the link that we provided in the chat box. Our next webinar is about driving organization performance by understanding other points of view on October 27 from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Registration for our events are free and can be found on our website. You can also find us on the social media platforms such as Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope to see you soon. Have a good day and have a good night to our guests from other time zones. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.